If Donald Trump does not win the debate, and the media will never say he won even if he does, but if he doesn't win it for the American people who will be watching in great numbers, then I think Harris will win the election.
Legendary conservative commentator and former Fox News host Bill O'Reilly, who is an open Trump supporter, seems to be publicly predicting Trump's defeat in both the high-stakes upcoming debate and, consequently, the 2024 election. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to talk about in this video. Bill O'Reilly is someone we have increasingly checked in on with respect to the election for a couple of reasons. Number one, he is an infamous, legendary conservative pundit. He was the host of the O'Reilly Factor on Fox News. He's a frenemy and sparring partner of Jon Stewart. And he's one of the few conservative commentators who, even though he is an unapologetic Trump supporter, he's willing to criticize Donald Trump when he deems it's appropriate, which makes his perspective interesting in the sense that he's not a tried and true cultist the way that, Jesse Waters or Sean Hannity are. So with that in mind, he has been, with increasing regularity, critical of Trump's messaging and rhetoric strategy since Vice President Harris became the Democratic nominee. He has been saying, hey, Donald Trump needs to focus on policy, which is hilarious, but he needs to focus on policy. He needs to avoid personal attacks if he wants to win this election. And in his most recent appearance on News Nation, he seems to be predicting Trump's defeat in this upcoming debate, which he thinks is really, really important and potentially outcome determinative. So we're going to play these clips and unpack them together, starting with this short one here, which just captures Donald Trump in a nutshell.
Is this Trump's only option, only path to victory, is going negative?
Trump's always going to go negative. It's always in his DNA.
He says Trump is always going to go negative. It's in his DNA. That's really, really important for the clips I'm about to show you. So he even laughs at the notion, scoffs at it, this idea that Trump is going to do anything but go negative against Vice President Harris. So with that in mind, that inevitability, that sense of inevitability that O'Reilly has of Trump, let that be the lens by which we examine the rest of these clips, because he tries to offer the flailing, floundering Trump some crucial advice, and he does get pushback from the News Nation host here, and so does Trump by extension.
So what does Trump have to do in the debate, which is everything? All right? If Donald Trump does not win the debate, and the media will never say he won even if he does, but if he doesn't win it for the American people who will be watching in great numbers, then I think Harris will win the election. But all Trump has to do is...
So, think about that. He thinks that this election will be watched by so many Americans that it is outcome determinative for the election, that the debate will be outcome determinative for the election, which historically speaking, we have no data to support. However, the most recent debate between President Biden and Donald Trump was so impactful and so highly viewed. It was probably the single greatest contribution to President Biden withdrawing from the race. It effectively dealt a death blow to his political career, or rather the reactions to it. So I think it's fair to say that this debate might indeed be very, very important. But O'Reilly seems to think it's not just very important. It could potentially kill Donald Trump's political career entirely if he does the negative thing and loses the debate. So again, some more clips to consider.
I've got
10 of them. Okay, so Bill, I know you got 10 of them. At least according to the rules we've seen, Donald Trump has agreed not to ask questions. Now, that's the latest version of the rules that got put out. We'll see the final one.
I have not seen
coming up. Well, there you go.
Then he can make a statement.
No. Then he can make a statement. But he makes statements all the time. He makes statements all the time. It doesn't seem exactly to be working.
I'm just telling you what Trump has to do to win this debate.
Okay. All right. So I think about
Kamala Harris is
what
going
you
to
just
come in
said.
with memorized answers.
No. I think about what you're saying about how Kamala Harris hasn't been defined. That seems to be by design, right? Because Joe Biden wasn't defined in 2020.
Yeah, absolutely.
He moved to the center, after the primaries. Didn't do a lot of interviews. We had this video queued up. I think it had already played, but it's of Kamala Harris walking from the motorcade to Air Force Two. Normally, at the moment where they would walk over to the press corps and take some questions, have some conversations. She looks like she's on her phone. She has earbuds plugged in. Evidently, she's still back in the day with wired earbuds. She gets to the top of the stairs there and turns with her phone as though she's still on the call, right? With the earbuds coming out and in her ear, which may be how she talks on the phone. It's not how I do. Is that, I understand that you don't like it, but it's a really smart strategy.
So, again, the host there, Vitter, he's not a big fan of the vice president. He's very conservative based on my viewing of his channel. But his point is, whatever you want to say about her media presentation, her efforts to appear as a cipher, which is something that Republicans seem to allege, this idea that she speaks in ambiguities and vagueness, even though my friend Steve Shives has a really good video out at the time of recording. I'll probably link it either in the first comment or in the link in the description, talking about the substantive policies which have come out of the Harris campaign, which, by the way, has only been around a fraction of the time of the Trump campaign. I digress, but his point is well taken, even if you disagree with the premise that the vice president is winning the election, as much as Bill O'Reilly wishes it weren't so. And his point about Donald Trump staying on message, well, even when Donald Trump attempts to stay on message, he's often incoherent and unpersuasive, right? I mean, isn't he? We have no data to suggest that, his popularity increases with independents and moderates after town halls and these rallies. Like, even when he's not actively insulting the opposition, what's he doing to actually shore up whatever advantages he has? How is he maximizing on anything, even when he stays on message, even when he's not being negative? Basically, whenever he does what Bill O'Reilly suggests he should do, which is focus on policy, he's really not a good deliverer of policy. Donald Trump's advantage on policy, this is my belief, and I believe it's well-founded. Donald Trump has a polling perception on certain key aspects of policy. There's no doubt about that, right? So generally speaking, he polls better in the economy. Now, if you've watched this channel, you know that the Democratic Party are better stewards of the economy, that the economy performs better when Democrats are in the White House compared to Republicans. And that's clearly the case with Trump as well. However, people look back on his presidency with nostalgia. I would argue that to whatever extent Trump has an advantage on policy, it's because of nostalgia. It's because of propaganda. It's not because Donald Trump is the great communicator of persuasive policy. And I think Vitter actually made a really good point for which O'Reilly has no satisfying answer. When Donald Trump does what people want Trump to do, it still doesn't work. He is banking on nostalgia and the institutional advantages of the Republican Party to carry him across the finish line. And right now, as of right now, that could change tomorrow, but as of right now, it's not working. One more clip.
Okay, so I don't think most Americans
to voters who
stupid.
don't like Donald Trump, to voters though who don't like Donald Trump, and a majority of Americans, his unfavorable numbers speak for the same. So you don't think there's persuadable voters?
They're not going to vote for him. I do. I think there's about 10% of persuadable, apathetic voters, people who don't pay attention till the last minute. It's like shopping on Christmas Eve. Okay, that you can move them if you demonstrate that your opponent, all right, because remember, Trump has 4 years to run on. Kamala has nothing to run on. Nothing. The Biden administration has been a disaster. This campaign's like the campaign of 1980.
So, according to polls, to some extent, that is the perception. Although, again, economic and consumer sentiment is changing. As a matter of fact, President Biden's approval rating is higher than it's been probably in a year. I think he's almost at, basically half and half, and he's been underwater 4 years. But Vitter's point, again, Donald Trump is just not he's not a popular politician. And I love the fact that gets pointed out. And by the way, I think O'Reilly himself recognized that Donald Trump is not exceptionally well liked. He has his MAGA base, the cultish base, which will turn out for him, that is not sufficient to win an election. So what's he going to do to persuade voters in this upcoming election, or excuse me, in the upcoming debate, and then in the time after the election? Seems like he's banking on the vice president failing, right? Which is why so many Republicans have been demanding that she do more interviews. She needs to do more interviews. What they're hoping is if she's out in front of the camera enough and for long enough and for, with increasing frequency, that she'll say or do something which will alienate voters, or she'll face plant in some way, which will turn people off. Basically, what they're hoping is that the vice president will screw herself over because Trump is not really in a position to deal a lethal blow to her campaign. She is more popular than he is. Her favorability is higher than his. And people, when they do dislike her less, like more people dislike her less than Donald Trump. So I don't know. The whole thing is really interesting to me because she has on paper all of the advantages in this upcoming debate, even though people like Bill O'Reilly want you to believe that actually it's just an illusion and it's Donald Trump's debate to lose. But he's not a good debater. He's not. He can't speak competently and expertly about policy. Vice President Harris is an accomplished debater, an accomplished prosecutor. She is somebody, if you look back at her senatorial career in particular, she fed lifelong career Republicans into the proverbial wood chipper. Bill Barr, Donald Trump's own attorney general, whom Bill O'Reilly likes immensely, a seasoned prosecutor himself, twice attorney general, just shredded him. Jeff Sessions, another career conservative prosecutor, attorney general under the Trump administration. And now current Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. I mean, these moments went viral. If both of these two, let me put it like this. The vice president doesn't need Donald Trump to not turn up for the debate to beat him. I submit to you that if Vice President Harris and Donald Trump both maximize whatever it is that they're capable of, basically, if Donald Trump is in top form and Vice President Harris is in top form, it won't matter because she'll still beat him. Her top form trumps, pun intended, his. She has the advantages. And O'Reilly, to me, gave the game away when he says, listen, this debate, everything's riding on it. It's outcome determinative. And if Trump loses it, he will lose the election. And he said in the beginning, it's in Trump's DNA to be negative, and that will not change. So it seems to me he's making a pretty clear prediction that Trump will lose this one. I know he'll lose the debate, barring some sort of freak cosmic accident where the vice president has some sort of Mitch McConnell-esque medical episode. She's going to win the debate. I don't know if the debate is so important that it will determine the outcome of the election, but it's going to be very important, probably the single highest profile event that the vice president has between now and the election. So she certainly can't afford to screw it up. I don't know if it's outcome determinative, but I do believe she's going to kick his ass at the debate. And it seems like Bill O'Reilly does too. And in the meantime, you let me know what you think in the comments.